welcome to the second session this morning for the conference. We have Davide, who is going to be talking about upgrading your IzWS environment, and I'll let him introduce himself in a moment. Just to say that you are all muted. At the end, I will allow you to unmute yourselves if you have any questions, but if anything comes up that you want to ask about during the session, you can pop the question into the chat, and if there's an appropriate place to break in, I'll let Davide know that there is a question. Okay, I will hand over now to Davide.
Okay, thank you, Anna. So let me first introduce myself. I am Davide Canalis. I work for IBM in the same team as Anna. So I'm part of the SMPO team. So we lead migration from competition to IzWS. I used to work for HCL as part of the IzWS lab. And I was a developer for 5 years of IzWS before joining IBM 2.5 years ago. So today's session 6H, will be about IzWS upgrade. And so I will say, let's start with the agenda. So basically, today, this presentation will focus on those 4 sections. So first, we will mainly focus on the controller upgrade. Then we will see the tracker upgrade, how to perform a tracker upgrade, and then how to upgrade all the other IzWS tasks. And the latest part will be about the fallback. So if anything goes wrong during the upgrade, how to fall back to the previous version without any problem. So this is the agenda, but let's first focus on these slides. So this presentation is mainly about the upgrade of the controller started task because it's the most complex part of the upgrade. If a slide is about another task, it will say clearly in the title or in a section title. And then, well, I will give you some details about the other tasks upgrade. If you're planning to do an upgrade, plan it long before you do anything, and contact IBM support by raising a case before doing the upgrade, so they know when you are doing what and when. So be prepared long in advance. So prepare started task and JCL you intend to use, and test again this process. Obviously, include backouts in your test. And the last point, this presentation assumes that you are performing the upgrade from a supported release of IzWS. So this is mainly about one-step upgrade. But obviously, let's say you are on an 8.6 version of IzWS and you want to upgrade on 10.2, you will probably have to perform a 2-step upgrade. I think that 2-step upgrade from 8.6 is supported, or even more if you are on an older version. So let's go. First, why a presentation about IzWS upgrades? So if you took part to the previous session this morning, you probably already know that the release life cycle is going to change. So 10.2, the standard support for 10.2 and new release after that will be shorter. So the standard support will be 3 years only instead of 5. For 10.2 in particular, it will be 4 years just because it needs to be at least 1 year later version 10.1. But apart from that, future release will only have a standard support for only 3 years. So upgrades will happen more frequently, probably. So it's very important for us to understand which are the steps involved and which are the risks that involve when you are performing an IZWS upgrades, and how to avoid having unsuccessful upgrades. So let's start with the controller started task. That is the most important, obviously. And here is a quick list of steps to perform a controller upgrade. So obviously you need to run the SMP install, otherwise you won't have the software. You need to allocate all the dataset, running EQQ jobs and updating the JCL with current space values. Step number 4, you need to upgrade the SMF and JS exits, and then you can start creating the new controller started task, tracker, and all other tasks. And you can create the new planning jobs, obviously. This can be done long in advance. If you're planning to update the tracker in the same window together with the controller, step number 7 will involve the tracker upgrade using the new product libraries, obviously. Otherwise, you can directly go to step number 8. So you will have to stop your controller, migrate VSAM databases using EQQ EasyTop, and then you can update your controller parameters to start the controller with new values. Then you will have to stop the controller again. And after the checkpoint have been initialized in the previous start of the controller, that is the real first start with the new version, you need to merge the checkpoint with the older version. And then you will have to update your controller parameters for the normal startup. And then you can start your controller. Once you have done this last step, your controller will be running with the new libraries, with the new version. Obviously, after your controller have been upgraded to, let's say, version 10.2, you will have to migrate any user customization. So if you customize anything, if you have created your exits, if you have PIF programs running, you will have to migrate them to the new release. That mainly is mainly about link editing your programs with the new libraries. Okay, so let's go. First step, as I was saying, SMP install, otherwise you won't have the software. So obviously you can go through the documentation, IZWS documentation, that will give you all the information about how to install SMP, how to perform the SMP install of the software. Obviously, include all the available PTFs to ensure that your software is at the latest version, and then you can load the tracker, controller, and the national language software. After you did this, you can start playing with EQQ jobs. So EQQ job CList will guide you through allocating, creating all the samples and allocating all the dataset that you need um, to perform your upgrade, or anyway, install a new version of the controller. EQQ jobs will create some JCL for you that you will need to run to allocate VSAM and non-VSAM dataset that you will need for your new version. But remember to update the current space values, the space values in the JCL itself, because default values are quite small. So as you can see here, by default, I guess AD VSAM dataset will be just 2 cylinders. So compare with your actual installation and update those values to whatever you have in your actual VSAM and non-VSAM dataset. SMF and JS exits need to be upgraded, but this can be done long before you perform controller or tracker or any other IZWS task upgrades, because they are downward compatible. So you can directly upgrade SMF and JS exits. Here you have a table of the exits that you need to upgrade. And after you perform the upgrade, you can still run with your old version. So let's say that you are on a 9.5 or a 10.1 and you are going to upgrade to 10.2. You can upgrade your exits and still work with your 9.5 version. There's no problem since they are downward compatible. At this point, you can start creating your new procedure. So start from the started task. So usually what you have to do with the started task? Well, if you do not refer to the version for in the dataset name of your controller, the only thing that you will need to change will be the libraries, IZWS libraries, so steplib and mlib that you have in your procedure started task, if you have it, because you might concatenate the steplib into the linked list, so you don't even have to specify the steplib in that case. But if instead the version information is part of your dataset name, you can think of using system symbols that represent the version. So to save time, this will be the only change that you will have to do. You will have to change the symbol value once you restart the controller with the new version. And then you will have to do the same with the tracker and other started tasks. Usually, if you do not refer to the version in the dataset name, the only thing that you need to change again is the steplib and mlib pointing to the new version. These procedures can be prepared long before you perform the upgrade. So you can be sure that while you are performing the upgrade, the only thing that you need to do is to rename the procedure that you have prepared in advance and back out the old procedure that was running the previous version. And another important thing that you will have to do is preparing planning jobs. So extend or trial plan. This can be done, again, long in advance, and you can test them before doing the upgrade. So basically, create the planning job through the dialog, through a ZWS dialog, and compare it with your previous version to see if everything is working fine. So they will be ready to put in the libraries once you perform the upgrade. Okay, let's focus on this slide. These slides is only if you are updating the tracker started task at the same time as the controller. This is not the preferred method that we usually do not suggest to perform the tracker upgrade at the same time as the controller, but this can be done. The preferred method will be by doing the tracker upgrade in a separate window, doing an IPL. We will see how to do this in a separate section, but if you really want to upgrade your tracker at the same time as the controller, that's what you need to do. So you need to use those two parameters. So go to the tracker parameters and use SSCM name with those values. So use this parameter SSCM name. The red X is the letter for the release, for the new release. And use the build SSX rebuild parameter in the tracker path. So update your tracker parameters. And after you restarted the tracker, you will have to comment them for the subsequent restart. you can keep the same event dataset, and this should not be empty, as you could lose events. Then you have to stop all the initiators. You need to be sure that no jobs are running. You need to close any file transfer processes that you might have on your system. And even if you do this, you might lose some events that are coming from other tasks that creates events for the tracker. Okay, that's the reason why this is not the preferred method to perform the tracker upgrade, because you could lose some events. And the start of the tracker on a new release using those two parameters means that the ECSA area will be emptied when restarting with the new release. That's the reason why there's a risk that you will lose events that have been created in the meantime that you stop and restart your tracker. At that point, you can stop the tracker and the controller as well, and then you can start the tracker using the new procedure. At this point, your tracker will be running at new release. And as I was saying, we want to reduce the possibility of losing events. This is why we need to do this as quickly as possible. So this quick stop and start means that there's just a little risk of losing events. But as I was saying, the preferred method is to do it in a separate time window by doing an IPL. That's the only way to ensure that you won't lose any events. We will see it later. So let's move on with the controller upgrade. So at this point, you have prepared everything so you can stop your controller. You can deactivate the job submission for any jobs running on FTA workstation if you have it. This is an optional step. You might want to run the current plan, replan when the controller is down. And if you normally use the check subsystem yes in the batch option, change it to no because, well, obviously the controller will be down. And if you use topology parm and JRun history parameters in the batch option, comment them. And before stopping the controller, go to 6.6.2, the query current plan dialog, and take note of which is the JS file currently used. It could be JS1 or JS2. You need to take note because we will have to use this file later. If you plan to run verification test when the controller is back up, you can reduce any CPU workstation parallel servers to 0. So once you start up the controller, the job submission can be active or deactive. It doesn't matter because any job will run because the parallel servers are set to 0. At that point, you can slowly increase the parallel servers to run jobs. And you can even define a specific workstation that will run some test jobs. So no production job will run until your test jobs completed successfully. In this way, you will prevent any production jobs from running. Why doing this? Because if you have production jobs running and then you discover that something didn't go fine, the fallback will be a little bit harder, and there will be some more steps involved to fall back. So it's better to prepare to be prepared to this situation. If you are going to update the tracker at the same time, you need to, this should be previous slide, okay. If you think of updating the tracker, you need to perform what we have seen in the previous slide. Otherwise, you can stop the controller and go on. At this point, we are supposing that we are performing the tracker upgrade in a separate window, by the way. So at this point, we can migrate the VSAM databases. There are few databases that need to be migrated. For example, the AD with all the definition, all the application definition. The same will be for WS that contains workstation and so on. So first, create a backup of all your controller dataset, both VSAM and non-VSAM. The new files have been allocated previously, obviously. Review the sample job that you should prepare in advance. And we will see in a moment what we have to put in this EQQ ICMVS sample job that is provided by IzWS library in the SAMP lib. And well, you need to ensure that the active JCL repository that we took note in option 6.6 previously is used as input. Ensure that JS1 is used as output because IzWS by default uses JS1 as active JCL repository when you start with an empty checkpoint dataset. We will see this in a moment. And then if you think of running a replan after closing the controller, well, we'll see in the next slide what we need to use as input files for the new kernel plan. Then after you prepare your jobs, you can run it, and this will convert the old VSAM dataset into the new IzWS format. Then verify that the conversion program ran successfully. Only return code 0 is okay for this job. So if anything went wrong with this job, you should fix it or stop the migration process. As I already said, prepare this job in advance and test it. Why preparing this job in advance? To reduce the stop time of the controller. So the less time the controller is down, the better it is. And this is an example of how this job looks like. This job will run the EQQ EasyTop utility that is provided by into IzWS libraries. So we have an option, running a replan or not running a replan. On the left, if you run a replan, you can see that cpin, cxin, and xdin files need to point to the new current plan, ncx, and nxd files. No change in the output. As you can see on the right, the cpin, if you're not running a replan, will be cp1, the cx will be cx, and xdn will be xd. So no differences on the output. The only thing that you need to focus on is the input file that you are providing. It depends on whether you run a replan or not. And let's focus for a moment on the JS file. So the JS input file is JSX, where X is the number that you took note on 6.6 previously. JS out will always be JS1. So let's suppose that the job completed okay, so we can go on with our migration. What we have to do now? Well, so let's consider that this procedure with the new controller parameters have been prepared long in advance again, because you want to reduce the time your controller is down. So ensure the JT files, JTArch, and checkpoint dataset are empty. You need to start with those files empty. And if you use the dual job tracking logs, they should also be empty. Then you can modify the JCL procedure, or if you prepare the backup copy of this new JCL procedure, you can modify the controller to point to any new DT name that you might have on the new release, because obviously with the new release, you might have some new dataset, new DT statement coming into your procedure. And the parameters for the next startup should be prepared in advance as well. And what you have to change there. Okay, so the checkpoint dataset is not yet initialized, it's empty. So you need to set current plan new in the JT option. You need to specify build SSX and SSCM name parameters in the OPC OPTS. X, again, stands for the release suffix. That is M for 9.3, N for 9.5, O for 10.1, and P for 10.2. What about the job submission? Specify job submit no, and the fault tolerant job submission no. So any job can, you will prevent any job from running until you are ready. And if you use OPC host standby or Plex for high availability, change them to OPC host yes, just for this first start under the new version. At this point, if you did this, you can start your controller. This will be the first start with the new release values, okay? So you are running with, let's say, version 10.2 now. And this first start will cause the normal mode manager subtask to initialize the checkpoint dataset with the new release header. So the first line will be initialized with the new release values, okay? Verify that there's no error occurring in the controller startup. And now the switch has been completed, so your controller is actually running with the new release now. At this point, if no error occurred so far, you can stop the controller because we have to update the controller parameters again. And we need to perform some more steps. So now the controller again is down. And the first thing you need to do is to perform the checkpoint file merge. So you have the old checkpoint file, that is the file that contains all the events that the controller received so far from all the trackers, okay? And you have the new file, that is the one that you just initialized. You started with an empty checkpoint dataset, and at the very beginning, at the very start, the very first start with the new release, the controller, the normal mode manager in the controller initialized that new checkpoint file. And this can be done through this utility. It's a pretty small job that will take 3 files as input. The old checkpoint, let's say the 9.5 version, the current 10.2, the one that you started with, and the new file, the one that you will finally use on the next run, okay? So you can, for example, you can rename the file that you just used for this start to checkpoint.current, and then you can create another checkpoint that will be an empty file, and this repro will copy the current content of the current checkpoint file into the new file, but only the first line. That is the one that you that contains the header that have been initialized with the new version values. And then you need to copy the rest of the file from the old version, because the new version file just contains useless information. It does not contain anything that you want to add. But the old checkpoint, the one coming from the previous release, contains all the information, all the events that have been sent to the controller. So skipping the first line, you will copy the rest of the content into the new file. At this point, you have performed the merge of the checkpoint file that can be used for the subsequent restart of the controller. And then again, you need to update your controller back to the values that you need to use for the normal startup. So the current plan value should be set back to current. You need to comment out both the build SSX and SSEM name values in the OPC options. Leave job submit and fault tolerant job submit to no, and use IzWS dialog to make the submission active once you restart your controller. If you commented out route option to prevent the tracker to communicate with the controller, uncomment them now. But this is just an optional step, because on the previous configuration, the one that we use to initialize the checkpoint, the tracker and the controller will not communicate with that configuration. So in theory, there's no reason to comment out route option to prevent tracker communication. And if you use standby or Plex in the OPC host, and you had to set them to yes, change back to the normal value that you were using. At this point, you can start the controller. You can check your current plan is still as it was before the upgrade started. You can run any test application, so you can increase the parallel server only on the workstation that hosts your test application jobs. So you can simply run those test applications. If anything goes wrong, you can stop and no live job, no production job ran. But if everything is okay, your migration is complete and you can successfully run with the new version. After you start the controller, remember to go back and change job submit and ftwjsub parameters back to yes. So at the subsequent restart, in any future restart, they will be set back to yes. This is done just for this first normal startup to prevent jobs from running immediately. Okay, so your controller is now running the new version. And now we will focus on the tracker upgrade. So this section will focus on the tracker upgrade, but we are doing the tracker upgrade in a separate time window. This can be done even before you perform the controller upgrade. Usually you first perform the tracker upgrade and then the controller. There's anything that will prevent you from having the tracker at running it with an higher version than the controller. So how to do this? You need to perform an IPL of the system. This is the only way to ensure that you will not lose any tracking data, any event. So you need to plan an IPL of your system. And obviously, these need to be done separately from your controller upgrade. So why during an IPL? Because if the ZOS system is down, basically no process will create events for your tracker. There's no file that can be received, no task use programs that creates events, any job, no job can run. So this is the main reason for performing the tracker in a separate window. Once you start up your system, the subsystem will be defined in the even before the JES or TCP/IP or any other task will start. So there will be no event that cannot be handled. How to do this? Well, basically, the subsystem load modules EQQ init X and EQQ SSCM X, where X stands for the new release value, need to be in the linked list after the IPL. In this way, your tracker will basically migrate during the IPL with no other JCL changes, okay? Usually we suggest to create a small library that only contains those two modules. And this library can contain these modules for any IzWS version. Since the letter is different for any version, you can have all the modules version in the same library. So let's say EQQ SSCM O for 10.1, and the same with the P for 10.2. So they are different modules. And the only difference is how you define your tracker, but we will see it in a moment. So what we need to do, let's go. Add those two modules to the linked list. So copy those two modules from the SEQQLMD0, from the step lib by ZWS step lib, into your separate dataset. This library need to go into the link library concatenation. EQQ initx is a module that is used by the master scheduler initialization function when the ZOS system is IPL'd, okay? So this happens at the very beginning of the IPL before any other tasks is running, including JES or OMVS. This module, EQQ init, will load the other module into the common storage, and this will be placed above the 16 megabytes line. And remember to copy the modules again whenever you update your IzWS. So if any PTF is being applied to your IzWS libraries, if they modify any of those two modules, they need to be copied into this library again. This is especially important for the SSCM module, and because it needs to be at the same level as the rest of the IzWS code. And obviously take care of your linked list concatenation, because if you put your step lib, the SEQQLMD0, into the concatenation, you need to be very careful, because you need to be sure that the current SEQQLMD0 will come before the new one, because you might add it long before performing the upgrade. And then you need to go into the parm lib. Before doing the IPL, you need to go into the parm lib and change this member pointing to the new initialization module, EQQ init, with the new letter, with the new release letter. Obviously, you need to update your tracker procedure. And again, as usual, you will probably need to, the only change that you will need to do probably will be upgrading the step lib and EQQ M lib. And if you use variables, it will be easier, because there will be only one place to change in your procedure. And then you simply need to run an IPL. So this process is pretty straightforward. So tracker upgrade, it's really simple. And after the IPL, the tracker will restart running the new IzWS version. And then how to perform other IzWS tasks upgrade. So if you have data store or a server or an output collector, remember, they need to be at the same release as the controller. So they need to be upgraded at the same time. But this is pretty easy because the only thing that you need to change is the step lib and m lib again. So no change in the on the other dataset, the dataset used by those started tasks. So once you perform the controller upgrade, you will have to restart both data store, server, and output collector running the new version again. And that concludes the section for the upgrades. So we are coming to the fallback. It can happen that something go wrong during the upgrade. So what you have to do in case you want to fall back to the previous version. Well, if you didn't run any production job, you can follow those instructions to fall back, because it's basically the same procedure we did for the controller, but we need to fall back. So we need to set those two parameters with the previous value. So we need to initialize our controller with the old version in order to restart the controller with the previous version. Your dataset, all your controller dataset have been you did a backup of all your datasets, so you can simply go back to those datasets, and that's the only case. So no jobs, anything run so far. For example, you ran your test job and something failed. So at this point, you can go back to the previous version. But that's the only situation where you can perform this procedure. Otherwise, you need to contact IzWS support. If your IzWS has been active in production for some time, you better contact the IBM support to determine which is the best strategy to fall back. So, if you want to fall back because your migration didn't go fine, but you didn't run anything, that's what you need to do. You need to run EQQ PCS 01 and 02, the jobs that have been created by EQQ jobs, the old version definition, obviously, to allocate fresh dataset for the fallback. If the current plan is intact as it was before and the job tracking is working okay, you can close down the system in the same way you did before. You can check which is the JCL, the JS file that is active right now. That will probably be JS1, obviously, because you started with JS1. And decide if the tracker will stay on the new version. But if you did it separately, obviously you won't fall back with the tracker as well, because you probably did it weeks before. If possible, create up-to-date dataset for the LTP and the new current plan for the controller. Do not submit a replan before the shutdown, unless the permanent option was used in this parameter SSCM name on the converted system, or if this parameter was not specified. If you use this parameter with temporary option, this message will be issued if you run a replan after the controller was shut down. So what you need to do now? You allocated your dataset, and now you need to run the conversion process from, let's say, 10.2 back to your previous version. So it's the same procedure we did before. And then you need to modify the controller parameter for for the new initialization. So it's a kind of migration back to the previous version. So your checkpoint is empty. You must set current plan new. You need to specify those parameters again in the OPC option. You need to stop the submission by specifying job submit no. And if you add standby or Plex in the OPC host, set back to yes again. And then, yeah, oh, sorry, I was forgetting about this. Before running this job, check if a daily process was submitted before shutting the controller down. Because this will modify, if you run a daily plan job, this will modify the CP1, CX, and XD1. And in that case, you need to use them as input and use NCP and NCX and NXD as output. But I hope that you didn't run any daily plan so far. Number 8, you can start your controller with updated parameters, and then you need to stop it again, merge the checkpoint file, and then you can start the controller again with normal parameters. So as you can see, this is basically the same procedure as the upgrade. The only thing that will change is that you are falling back to the previous version. If your new current plan is not fully updated compared to what you had before, you can use the MCP dialog to update the status of the operation that had been completed in the meantime. So once you perform this manual update of the current plan, this can be considered as the last step of your fallback, and then you can start the data store if you use it. So this concludes the fallback procedure. Here are a couple of tech notes that you might want to have a look at before planning your upgrade. In particular, the last one, we give you some information about how to perform a two-step migration. So let's say you are running an upgrade from a 9.1 to 10.2, or even before 9.1 to 10.2, you will have to perform it in 2 steps at least. And so here are some notes about it. So that's the end of this session.
Hi, Marco. Sorry, Davide, there were some conversations going on in the chat whilst you were presenting. Oh,
Okay, 10.1
yeah.
was at the very
answered.
beginning.
I answered, but
Okay.
yeah. But one of them, Andy, was just asking for a reminder of when the different releases were going out of support. And he was also asking about WebAdmin, but WebAdmin is not an IBM product. So I have no idea why or for what reason they changed the name of the WebAdmin product. You'll have to contact, I can't remember who provides that one. But you can unmute yourselves now and talk to us.
Okay, yeah, I was just looking on the IBM website, the IBM like documentation. I was just getting a bit confused with the terms they used. But I think 10.1, when's that going out of release? Because everything now is 10.2, isn't it?
Mhm.
10.2 is the current. Yeah.
Yeah, because 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 is the most recent.
Yeah.
At
So
10.1 is planned for 2027.
2027. Okay,
Yeah,
plenty of
not yet
time.
announced.
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's not announced yet, and it will probably be in the the tail end of the year, as you say,
Yeah, they
September.
might announce it. Yeah, a long time. Yeah, I'm just a user. I work in support, so I was just curious. Yeah, because currently all the panels that I see say 10.1. So yeah, so I
Yeah,
guess we've got lots of time to carry on.
you have.
Yeah.
You have. As it says, 10.1, you've got until 2027. And there will probably be a
10.3.
10.3.
Yeah,
Yes.
by then.
Yeah, there are certain rules as well about how long there should usually be 2 supported releases. So when they go to 10.3, then 10.1 will cease to be supported. So, you could guess that 10.3 should come out in 2027, or they may just keep 10.1 because depends how many changes they make by the small product enhancements, the SPEs. And Neil was also asking about being able to see this presentation because the video recordings don't appear immediately. And yes, Davide will, I am sure, if he noticed anything, make some small changes, but he will upload it to the GSE site, and you'll be able to download the presentation from the agenda. I think it's the little man pointing somewhere. You click on him and you get the that session's presentation.
Thank you, Anna.
Available
it's very
for
timely
download.
We're literally going through some upgrades at the moment, so
Yes.
we're just starting an upgrade cycle. So although we're confident, it's always nice to have another set of information to look at and cross-check.
Yeah, and as Davide mentioned, contact support when you're going to do it. That way they know if you know what you're up to. You can send them your plan for upgrade and so on, and they'll look that over. And they will be aware, obviously, of what you were doing and how you were planning to do it. So if the worst happens, and the reason we do this is because we know of 3 worst happens in the last couple of years, that you can go to them for the help, and they will be aware and will do their best to get you back without too much delay.
Starting in the test beds anyways. But give us a good, reasonable level of confidence. It sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, the manuals are, as manuals are, very comprehensive but tricky to read.
Yeah, I agree. Very, very detailed. Yeah.
Which obviously you want, but working out what you want out of it and what isn't relevant is also sometimes tricky.
That's why I was jokingly mentioning about what's the next AI. I was on a presentation yesterday where the guys were saying that it's going to really help the system programmers over the next years.
Yeah. I think that, and we expect it to become available, certainly, that you'll be able to query Watson for all the stuff that's in the manuals and things, but it will take time to get that in there. And yes, to be honest, knowing what can go wrong, I wouldn't want AI to actually do it for me. I wouldn't mind them coming up with a plan that I could, work on.
I think so. That was the
things
idea.
like that, but I wouldn't want it pressing the buttons.
Yeah, the examples they used were like DB2 upgrades, like what do you need to do when you're going from one release to the next.
Yes. Yeah. So, and it does take in data that's not just from the manuals. Lots of things like this, especially tech notes and things, may well be ingested as well.
Yes, that's what they say, don't they? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions on the session topic? Okay, so I will just thank Davide for his time. I'll thank you for all joining and participating, and maybe we'll see you at the next session.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll shut this down now.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank
Bye
you,
now.
Anna. Bye.